Hi, everybody, and welcome back to The Female Athlete, powered by Coach Parry. My name is Hayley Nixon, and we are going to be joining Shona Hendricks today, and we are discussing RED-S, otherwise known as REDS, a really important syndrome which is not only faced by female athletes, but men as well. So stay tuned to chat with us about that today. And of course, if you haven't done already, please subscribe to the channel so that you can get notifications of when our next video is released. Hey, Shona, good to be back with you again. And we're actually touching on a subject that I know we spent some time on previously, but it's just been such an engaging topic, and I think we're all learning more as we go. And that's the discussion of RED-S or REDS as it's commonly known. And before, you did explain a little bit about the relationship between what was previously called the female athlete triad and RED-S. So perhaps we can just have you explain and go into a little bit more of that today.
Awesome. Thanks, Hels. Yeah, happy to be here. And again, just discussing the importance of these kinds of topics. So RED-S or REDS, Relative Energy Deficiency in sport. And it's just such an important concept that I don't think enough athletes know about, not just female athletes. You know, we mentioned in the last video how the concept came from this female athlete triad of the sort of combination of disordered eating, low bone mineral density, and losing your period or amenorrhea. But over time, it's just developed into more of a spectrum, and where it wouldn't necessarily be the cascade of all three, but you could almost have a couple of, well, one or two of those kind of symptoms or disorders going on at any point in time. And more importantly than that it doesn't just affect female athletes, that the IOC, and they came out with a consensus statement, so that it also included male athletes, because many, male athletes can also suffer from low energy availability and so on. Sure. And an interesting stat is that they did a study around 3,000 ultra runners, and they found out that 93% of those runners had never heard of the term female athlete triad, let alone the new concepts around RED-S or REDS. And so I think it's just such a vital concept to be learning about and understanding, because it can have quite detrimental effects on your training and your performance, but even more than that on your overall health.
And absolutely, and I think with the greatest amount of respect, so many of our marathon runners and our top end endurance athletes are fighting a balanced scale of power to weight ratio, weight loss, low body fat percentage. And it can be a slippery slope into low energy and into low calorie intake, which, the athlete may think, oh, good, I'm getting to my race weight, but they don't know what's going on like under their skin, which is possibly a whole world of new dangers. So like, what are our risks as athletes?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Hels. And it can start in many ways, but one of the most common ways is that low energy availability. So sort of cutting calories, cutting carbs in particular. And when we see athletes that's when you are cutting carbohydrates, what tends to happen is it reduces your estrogen, or your estradiol, which is also known as E2, which is really the most important estrogen that we need in terms of building bones and building muscle, etc. And so what happens from there as well is when you get that reduction in estradiol, you have an increase in cortisol, and then you're just not going to be recovering properly. The body's pretty much in a state of stress the whole time. And so your risks from that point are, sort of injury risks from bone stress injuries. There will be lack of recovery. So it's going to affect your performance. And so I really think that is something to look out for. And so what often ends up happening with that is when there is this low energy availability, as many athletes or female athletes will not get their period as well. And I think we had such an insightful discussion with Anne Ashworth in our Coach Parry female athletes webinar we did the other day. And it's just so interesting to see that the perspective around elite athletes, and it's not just around female runners, but elite female athletes, is that if you're not getting your period, it's almost like this badge of honor, or how you've arrived. Oh, I'm not getting my period, that means I'm training really, really hard. But you're not getting your period, it's a really, really big red flag to say that your body is not in homeostasis. It's not working correctly. And I just, that was really, it was so insightful to get that information from Anne, and to hear other stories about other elite athletes who have been struggling with RED-S and how it's affected their health and their performance.
Yeah. And I mean, two things there. So as you say, the red flag that you're actually not getting your period, and all the issues that relate to that physiologically. But then secondly, then you can't even track your menstrual cycle, which we're now learning and have discussed thoroughly, that's actually such a pivotal part about really enhancing your performance and enhancing your training program, as if you know these things. So we're just stuck between a rock and a hard place, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, maybe that's tracking your cycle is so important, because then you're going to pick up, okay, well, I'm not actually getting my period. And again, in that webinar, it sort of came up about how some female athletes aren't getting their period, and then they're landing up falling pregnant because they're assuming that they're not getting their period, and then they might still be, they're not taking contraception, and then falling pregnant, and then that's going to have an effect. Or the alternates, where an athlete is struggling through this, and I'm speaking, this is more from a health perspective, but then in years later wants to land up having children, and is really mess with their health a little bit, and then will struggle to fall pregnant. So I think it has detrimental effects, from a performance perspective as well as health. It's just really something we need to look out for.
So it's really just an education about what the sort of syndrome is, if I can call it that, and then how we can avoid it. Because obviously we understand that there are, calorie limitations, that athletes do need to train hard. But just to try and get rid of the stigma, and exactly as you say, like it shouldn't be a smiley face. Yeah, I've lost my period. That's one less thing to have to deal with. Like, we need to keep that as something that's important to us as female athletes.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and we are talking about it, and there's a lot of people having these sort of discussions coming through. But I think females need to also, start reading about it. The IOC consensus statements on RED-S is free. It's not stuck behind a paywall sort of system. And so, Google that and read up on it, and understand the low energy availability and the effects it can have on your training and your health and your performance. Within that consensus statement, the IOC is now sort of put together this risk category, so the high risk, medium risk, or low risk, and you could then see where you fall in that. And if you're got low energy availability, or they almost put high risk category as disordered eating, and low bone mineral density, and whereas you could be sitting as an athlete almost what they categorize in the orange or medium risk factors of, I have low energy availability, but I'm constantly getting bone stress injuries or ligament injuries, and so figuring out where you are in this balance or in the spectrum, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Shones. I just think it's fundamental. Like we educate, and then we just give proactive ways of getting to the bottom of it, like getting your nutrition right, getting your training right, and then just looking for those red flags before they end your career or they limit your career, because otherwise, what are you doing all this sort of hard work for? So thanks very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Hales.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us today as we discussed RED-S with Shona Hendricks. It's a really important conversation for us to be having as female athletes, but also as male athletes and as coaches in general. If you haven't done so already, remember to subscribe to our channel. And if you'd like to watch our extensive video where we had a 4-panel webinar on all of these discussions together, please make sure you find it in our videos, and you can watch the full session there. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Bye.